Welcome to What Living Means. I'm Vanessa Jasinski. 67% of American households own at least one pet, with over 163 million dogs and cats living in homes across the country. Pet ownership provides numerous benefits, including companionship, stress relief, and increased physical activity. Pets can also help to reduce feelings of loneliness and depression, particularly for those who live alone or are isolated from others. In recent years, pets are viewed as increasingly important members of the family. They don't just live in the backyard anymore, as people now share a larger portion of their daily lives with their pets. This shift has created demand for more pet-friendly businesses, as our furry friends accompany their owners on routine errands and vacations. In this episode, we're talking all about pet adoption with Karen Martiny, founder of Animal Rescue of the Rockies. Her organization saves thousands of animals every single year in the hope that every dog and cat in Colorado finds a loving home. Well, thanks for joining us. And I know, Karen, you work with the Animal Rescue of the Rockies, which is a great organization. Tell me a little bit more about the organization.
Well, we've been around for 21 years now. We started back in 2003, and originally we were formed in Breckenridge, Colorado. I was one of the original founders with several friends, and we started to provide an alternative to the shelter environment for pets in Summit County, which is a very huge tourist area in Colorado, as you know. So we started to provide foster homes, like I said, as an alternative to a shelter environment. And we've stuck with that model on purpose for 21 years now because we just really like the idea of our dogs and cats being in the home environment. Yeah. And we actually spread to Denver several years later. We opened a thrift shop in Breckenridge also that's been going strong now for about 13 or 14 years. Because we don't have any, overhead or a building or a facility, the donations are able to go, towards helping the animals, a much larger percentage than they would be if we did have a facility. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons we decided to stick with the foster home approach too.
Yeah. Now, so tell me what led you to start Animal Rescue of the Rockies?
Kind of a funny story. I grew up without pets, and I always wanted a dog or cat, but my mom was allergic. Yeah. So finally in high school, I was able to have a cat. She had kittens in our backyard, and we kept her, and that's kind of was the beginning of my lifelong love of pets. Yeah. Although I had always loved animals before, I just couldn't have one. Other than turtles and a goldfish.
But you had a cat, and your mom was allergic.
Yes, but she was, but somehow
she powered through it.
Yes, and, yeah,
that's good.
I actually ended up starting Animal Rescue of the Rockies after I adopted a little dog from the Summit County shelter. Her name was Buffy, and she was with me for about 14 years. She was just the cutest little black, scruffy, Cocker Spaniel Poodle mix, and I just fell in love with her. She was my first dog. Well, she ended up being paralyzed when she was 5 years old because she had a ruptured disc in a spinal cord that happened just from repetitive jumping off and on furniture. And so she ended up getting a doggy cart. She was in a wheelchair this was 5 years old when this happened. So she lived until she was 14 and a half. So all that time, she was my baby. And she was like the talk of the town. I couldn't walk down the street in Breckenridge without being stopped every 10 feet by people asking, what happened to your dog? She was just the happiest little ambassador. So I just fell in love with her, and I just realized, she had been turned into the shelter by a gentleman who was living in his car, and winter was coming, and he knew it was going to be impossible for him to keep her warm in his car. So he took her to the shelter, which was the right thing for him to do. But I just started thinking about all the other pets, and with similar stories. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to be able to help more pets, and there's got to be others out there. And at the time, I had no idea the magnitude of the problem in this country. So we started small and just grew, and we expanded to Denver when we realized that obviously, bigger population
Yeah.
there, more pets needing homes. And most of our work now is done in the Front Range and Denver area.
Are you seeing more of an influx in the amount of people that have pets or are maybe even trying to get the pets into shelters now? And the only reason why I ask this because yesterday I happened to be at Park Meadows Mall with my family. We went for lunch, but everybody, I'd never seen this, but there were dogs everywhere. People were bringing the dogs in. They were going shopping and doing all of that. But I don't recall, seeing that many dogs in the mall. And so it seems like there is a resurgence of having pets. I mean, they're amazing. They're family members.
That's really great to hear. I think one of the things we have seen is that there are more and more pet-friendly places than there ever used to be. When you think about hotels, restaurants, that open their patios to pets, and it's we're lucky here in Colorado because it's a pet-friendly state. Other places aren't as lucky. There, you have restricted access on trails and at beaches, et cetera. So here in Colorado, we're very fortunate. So I think that's great. You saw that at Park Meadows. However, the pandemic has, lessened or come to a more reasonable, normal semblance of life. People have been turning their pets into shelters in larger numbers, and the shelters are definitely overflowing. All of the shelters that we work with to pull dogs and cats from are overflowing, basically. They're running out of room. They are begging rescues like ours to help take pets from them so that they can, open up their kennels. Because they're open admission shelters, they pretty much need to accept any pet that comes to their door. Whereas a rescue like us, we can only take, a limited number according to how many foster homes we have. So most shelters work with a variety of rescues like ours, and it's a great partnership. And again, that's something that's evolved over the past, I'd say really over the past dozen years. I've really seen it grow. It didn't used to be that way, but it's saving a lot more lives. So even though there are more pets that seem to be being abandoned or left in shelters, we're trying to keep up. New rescues are cropping up all the time. There are people out there trying to help. But it seems insurmountable a lot of times.
And that's an unfortunate thing too. But at the same time, the fact that your organization's been able to help, mitigate that is awesome. Now, how many pets do you adopt? What's that number look like?
Annually, it's around 1,800 to 2,000 pets, and which is a lot for a foster home based without a facility. So we're proud of those statistics. During COVID, we actually adopted out close to 2,500 that year, and that was our biggest year ever. But it's gone down since then, as has most places have experienced the same decrease in adoptions because people are returning to work and they're not at home as much.
So can I ask you? Well, I know when I was younger, we adopted a dog from the Denver Dumb Friends League down in Denver. And my first dog that we adopted, her name was Christmas because we got her on Christmas Day. But she was an old sheepdog and she was incredible. Probably like the best friend companion. She was part of our family and all of our Christmas pictures too. But my question is, what kind of animals do you see? So dogs, cats, are there any birds? What are some of the animals that you can adopt?
We decided to focus on dogs and cats because those were the species that we were most familiar with. Birds, rabbits, they're whole different care needs and feeding needs and behavior needs that we just aren't familiar with. So we decided to stick to dogs and cats. And we do bring in all sizes, all ages, everything from kittens and puppies to seniors. We bring in a lot of pets that have medical needs. Treatable surgeries. In fact, we just a couple of days ago, we had a dog named BB, a cute little black dog that had to have a total hip replacement. $5,500, but she needed it in order to live a pain-free life. So we do whatever we can. And our motto has always been to treat our foster pets as if they were our own pets and give them everything they need to be healthy and happy. Because if we're going to ask a family to adopt them and make them a family member. We want to do our part and make sure that they're in as good a shape as they can be prior to adoption. And we just never want to see any animals suffer.
Yeah, no. And those are all based on donations too.
Right.
Wow.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So is it a lot of just independent people that are donating, lots of companies, or how does that work?
Most of it is individuals. We've got a
Yeah.
lot of loyal supporters. We have a monthly giving program that we call our Lifesavers League. And for as little as $10 to $25 a month, people can join. And it really helps us throughout the year to pay for, treatments like these surgeries, or dogs that come in that have heartworm or a broken leg, or cats that need to have, eye surgery, you name it.
Yeah.
And so that's really where we get most of our funding. Our thrift shop does bring in a small profit, and we do get some grants from foundations that grant to nonprofits like ours, and from some private businesses that that support us with events or with donations. So it's kind of a mishmash, but I'd say the bulk of it is individuals who love animals and want to help.
Yeah, that's great. Now, what makes Animal Rescue of the Rockies different from other organizations out there?
One of the things that we've always prided ourselves on is that we do take all types. We're not, we don't just stick to what we call the cute fluffies.
Yeah.
In fact, we kind of really focus on helping the dogs that are overlooked in shelters. Some of the ones that, like maybe just the black dogs or the brown dogs that are kind of nondescript, maybe nothing that special to look at, but they're amazing pets.
Yeah.
And those, and same for cats, and the ones with the medical needs. A lot of times shelters don't have the resources to treat these types of injuries. Some of the shelters in other states routinely euthanize pets that, have something that's very treatable, even like ringworm in cats. So we focus on helping those, kind of the underdog. We don't like to really call them that, but most of our dogs, if you look at our website, are just kind of your run-of-the-mill, ordinary, everyday dogs.
Yeah, and those are the best dogs anyway,
Right, yeah.
That is so cool. So what are so I heard a few of the most common reasons pets are surrendered to shelters, but it's age or health. Is that the most common thing that you see?
Lately, it's been housing issues.
Oh, housing, okay.
Which is obviously a human problem that we're seeing, all over the country. I know shelters are citing that as the number one reason right now, even over behavior problems. We were surprised too.
Yeah.
People are, either losing their housing, or else their landlords are charging too high fees, for a pet, and they can't afford to stay in their apartment and pay that. A lot of times they're moving to a different state, they get a new job and they can't take the pet with them. So housing has really become the number one issue.
Yeah.
The second one would be behavior. The third would be age and medical related problems that people, just feel that they can't afford.
It's crazy just thinking about housing, because when you think about a pet, it's a family member.
Right.
How do you disconnect from that family member of yours just for a housing situation? And I know it is difficult. I mean, we own and operate communities across the country, but one of our things that is very different is that we love pets.
Oh, good.
Pets are part of the family.
Yeah.
And it's especially for rentals. You hear about multifamily, like apartments, their pet stipulations are pretty difficult.
Right.
They make it expensive, or can't be over a certain weight. So I think it's really important that people have to adapt, especially in the housing world, that pets are family, and they need to be inclusive of those pets too.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm really happy that your communities, are pet friendly.
We are.
I'm hoping the country's moving more towards that, and it seems like they are, but there still are a lot of places that aren't. And it makes it tough. And, my husband and I joke, we'd live in a tent before we had to, we just could never even consider it. But people with children or who don't have the financial means they just feel desperate, I think, and, at least if they take the pet to a shelter, it has a chance to find a new home. People that abandon their pets or dump them on the street, that's a whole different ballgame there, I know.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. So what do you think, Karen, for someone going out there wanting to adopt a pet? Like, what advice would you give them? Because I know it's easy for people to go to a pet store and just pick out a dog, but it's very costly too. But if they are looking at adopting a pet through, say, your organization, what advice would you give them? I mean, it's almost like going on a first date.
Sure.
In a way.
And it's a big decision, because when you bring a pet into your home, it's a lifetime commitment for that pet. That's what the ideal is. Two things I'd like to say is pet stores are usually stocked with pets that are from puppy mills. And so a lot of them may look healthy, but they end up having inbred genetic issues, health challenges, that sort of thing. And it's really a bad industry where I think a lot of animal welfare groups are trying to shut down across the country because people don't realize that when they go into a pet store and see these cute puppies and kittens, the parents of those puppies and kittens are usually kept in horrible conditions. And once they can't breed anymore, they're just killed in a really cruel way. So we don't condone supporting buying from pet stores at all. I think most people tend to go to breeders, either through what we call backyard breeders, a friend that has a cute dog and they let the dog have puppies and they're like, oh, I'll get one of those puppies. And again, by doing that, you're kind of perpetuating the problem of overpopulation in the country, because for every puppy or kitten that's taken home from a backyard breeder or a pet store, when you think of it, that's another one in a shelter that's literally losing its life, dying because there's not a home for it. So that's why we promote adoption from a shelter or a rescue group for that reason, because you're actually saving two lives that way. Because once you take a pet out of a shelter or from a rescue group, then that group is able to take another one in. So you're saving two lives. But in addition, the shelters and rescue groups are often more familiar with the pet, its personality, what kind of a home would be best for it. Because another thing you don't want to do is go by looks. Just because you may have had a German Shepherd or a sheepdog, as you had, that was a wonderful pet, doesn't mean that the one that you see, is going to have a personality like yours did. You just can't go by looks. So personality is much more important than, sorry, my cats are knocking things over.
No, that's okay. You know what? They're having fun. That's all that matters. And that, that happens all the time. My brother, they adopted a border collie, and his name was Mr. Sneakers. And he loved watching football on TV. So they would put football on or basketball, and he'd be up near the TV going back and forth, watching the ball.
How cute.
And I mean, people loved when they would have like a Super Bowl party. The dog would be right there following the ball, so no one ever missed what was happening.
Oh, that's adorable. I love it.
I was going to ask you, what are some of the misconceptions people might have about adopting pets from a shelter? Because I know, we hear about these things. I have to say, my entire marketing team has adopted.
Oh,
and
great.
It's awesome.
Awesome, that is.
Every single one of them, and I know Cassidy, who helps produce the podcast too, she's a big advocate. And her dog Juno was adopted from a shelter. So it's awesome. We just absolutely believe in it.
Good for you guys. I'm glad to hear that. I think some people still have the notion that pets in shelters are kind of damaged goods, that they're going to get a pet that has behavior issues or that was a reject, that sort of thing, where it's just not true, because most of the time it's not the pet's fault. Like I said, housing is the number one reason pets are turned into shelters. So you can have a perfectly good pet, and I think I read a statistic that something like 33% of the pets in shelters are purebreds. So even if you're looking for a purebred pet, check your local shelter. And there are also a lot of rescue groups that specialize in certain breeds, if that's what you want. Adopting a pet from a shelter can be a plus, because a lot of times the shelter will have a little bit of background information and know something about the pet's behavior. They may or may not be able to, for instance, test to see how a dog is with cats or vice versa. The pet has likely already been spayed or neutered and received its vaccinations, which is very costly these days. It's actually cheaper to adopt a pet than it is to get a free one and pay for that at your veterinarian's office yourself.
Yeah, and vet bills
yeah.
can get expensive
Oh, they
too.
can. They can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're huge proponents of getting pet insurance for that reason.
Yeah. No, we definitely got pet insurance with our little dog, and
Great.
and we use it quite a bit
Yeah,
because
I know.
every time we go to the vet, they're like, "Oh, well, she needs this vitamin or this or that or the heartworm."
Right.
It's a cost, but
It
we would
is.
do it hands down anytime
Yes.
because, like I said, it's some of the most joy we've ever had in our lives. Outside of course, our son is with our dog.
Sure.
She's
Right.
funny, she's happy. When you come home from a long day at work, that tail
Yeah.
just wagging
Oh,
back
yeah,
and forth. They're
right.
so excited that you're home. I
Yep.
mean, nothing beats that.
I agree. I mean, even our cats come running to greet us when we come
Yeah.
home, even if we haven't been gone for very long. And yeah, it's just that I can't imagine walking into an empty, quiet house.
No, I can't even imagine that either. I mean, you have to have some barks, some meows, all of
Yes.
that. So
Right.
that's great. What would you say to someone who is intent on buying from a breeder? I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit, but again,
Yeah.
you may not know what you're getting, right? From the breeder you might, but
Yeah. If it's a responsible breeder, you would feel better about it. But just from someone who has let their dog have puppies, you don't really know anything about the health or temperament, so you don't know what you're getting. And then again, the pet is likely not to have been spayed or neutered or had vaccinations yet, which again is going to add into the cost. So that's just why we encourage people to adopt from shelters and rescues instead, because you do have a better idea of what you're getting. And if you run into problems, you have that group there, if it's a good group, a shelter or rescue group, to support you, either with resources for behavior training. We do all we can to help our adopters if they have issues, and we refer them to trainers. We've helped advise them through health scares. We're there because we want it to succeed. Whereas you're not going to probably get that support from just getting from a breeder.
yeah. Now, can I ask you, how can people get involved with the organization? Do you have events happening and some other things that you can let us know about?
We are going to be at the Denver Home Show coming up at the Western Stock Show Arena. I believe it's March 22nd, 23rd, and 24th.
Okay.
So Animal Rescue the Rockies is going to have a booth there. We do hold adoption events once the weather warms up. We partner up with a lot of fun breweries, that have outdoor patios, so people can come have a beer and meet our pets. And those are always really fun events. And we announce all of those either on our website or on our Facebook page. Our Facebook page is Animal Rescue of the Rockies.
Okay.
If people do want to get involved through volunteering, etc., they can contact us via email, admin, ADMIN, at arrcolorado.org, or they can just go to our website and contact us through our website too.
I can't thank you enough about everything that you're doing, and it's so important to get the word out there about your organization and, the adoption process. I'm hoping that the housing piece of it, that'll change a little bit, hopefully for the best here soon, and they can find homes.
That's our goal. Our goal is for every pet to have a home in this country, of course, and for them, we'd like to be out of business, because we're not needed anymore. That'd be a great excuse to retire.
That would be awesome. But what you're doing is absolutely incredible, and what a wonderful organization. And
well, thank you. We try, and we're doing it all for the pets, just because we love them and want to help them.
Yeah. And they're amazing.
Yes, they are. And thank you for being so open-minded too with your communities and allowing pets and realizing they are family members and how important they are to people's lives too.
Thank you for listening to What Living Means. If you've enjoyed our show, please leave us a rating or review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. I'm Vanessa Jasinski, and I'll see you next time.